This is Living Power with Dan Hurst.
That's not acceptable. You are an individual who can make the choices, and God made you that way, and you need to stay in control. And God says, if you'll yield control, I'll increase your life. You'll be a living sacrifice. So, we are to come before God as a living sacrifice. Then we are, according to this passage in Romans, we are to come before God as holy. We're to come before God as holy. The second thing the Apostle Paul teaches is about this issue of holiness, which is such a foreign concept for most people, even for many Christians. As a believer, the Bible teaches this, you are holy. You may not act like it, but you are. You are holy. 1 Peter 1, verses 15 and 16 says, just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it's written, be holy because I am holy. The word holy means set apart. Set apart. It means that God has singled you out and set you apart, consecrated for God's purpose. That's what holy means. It doesn't mean that you will have a halo around your head and you walk around with your hands crossed all the time. It doesn't mean that at all. In fact, it means much more than that. It means that God has said, I want you for this. I have a purpose and a plan for. I have set you apart for this. I have called you to this. You are holy. You are called. You are set apart by God. It's not an action. It's not an attitude. It's a position and a commitment. God says, this is what I want. I want you to be holy. A condition, a commitment on your part. To be holy means that you understand that God has called you to a special kind of devotion. Your life is not your own, it's God's, and He can do whatever He chooses to do in and through your life. This is why so many Christians live unfulfilled lives. This is why so many Christians live unfulfilled lives. They're resisting the fact that God has consecrated them for His purpose. They find themselves in this spiritual limbo where they don't belong to the world, and yet at the same time, they're not in a position to be used or blessed by God. And so they're frustrated, and they're unfulfilled, and they wonder why this thing isn't working. Why? Here I am a Christian, I've given my life to Christ, I'm saved, I believe I'm saved, but things just aren't working. Are you on the altar? And are you set aside for God's purposes? Do you understand that God has called you to be holy? And are you fully and totally committed to that? Or are you just kind of say, well, sometimes I am. It's real easy to be holy and committed on Sunday morning. Have you noticed that? Except on your way to church. It's just real easy to be Christians when you're around a bunch of Christians. But what about Monday through Saturday? What about when you're dealing with the world and the conflicts that just so amazingly come against you after you've had a great spiritual experience? What about that crisis that you're in right now? That dark room that you're in? What about then when you have to go back to that and face that? You see, if you're resisting living out of God's purpose and will for your life, you're miserable. If you're not completely, totally set apart and consecrated to God's way and God's will and God's purposes and plans for your life, I can guarantee you, you're miserable. Your life is just chaotic. And you just don't know from one day to the next what's going to happen. And you just can't handle it. You're struggling with it. When you understand that call to holiness, you go into the world with an overwhelming sense of responsibility. When you understand that you are set apart by God for His purpose and His plan, you go and you face the world with a whole different attitude. You suddenly realize that you can't live out your responsibility on your own. You realize that you need God. That you realize that you can't do this on your own strength. You need supernatural power. I have mentioned this before, that if you ever see me driving on the road, or off the road, if you ever see me driving, get out of the way. Because when I drive, I pray. Usually keep my eyes open, but that's my prayer time. So I have, in my business, there are a few recording studios around town that I drive to do my commercial work and narration work. And so there's usually about a half an hour drive. They all seem to be about a half an hour away. So when I'm driving to a studio, that's a half an hour prayer. Driving back, that's a half an hour prayer. But I find myself during that time really, really just communing with God. That's my prayer time. That's my sanctuary. And it's amazing how if I ignore that time, how my whole attitude and my approach changes. And I find myself in a whole different state of mind. It's not that the work goes worse. It's not that at all. It's something more about my opportunity. God opens up opportunities when I understand that I'm set apart and committed to what God wants to do.
Looking for a Bible study that's focused on the practical application of the Bible? Check out our website at theopenclass.com.
Oh, Christ.